Good afternoon. It's Monday the 3rd of December 2012. Welcome to UK Column Live. I'm your host this afternoon, Brian Gerrish, and with me in the studios, Mike Robinson.
Afternoon.
I can tell you it's an overcast day. There was some blue sky here in Plymouth earlier on, but that seems to have disappeared. It's quite cold and there's a bit of a chilly wind, so we expect something similar for the next couple of days. We've been talking to people over the weekend, and it's quite obvious that more and more people are beginning to think that something is not quite right in Britain at the moment. There's just a feeling, an increasing feeling that something, I don't know, is breaking down, that people can't understand what's happening, things don't make sense to them. So our theme for this afternoon's news programme is going to be the agenda politics that's attacking Britain. And what better place to start than the three wise men? I'm not quite sure how that happened. We'll go back to the three wise men. And our point here is that it doesn't matter whether we've got David Cameron or Ed Miliband or Nick Clegg. They claim to come from different parties. They claim to have a different political agenda. But what's quite obvious is that there is a common theme running through the parties. And the common agenda, the common purpose, is actually producing the policies that are destroying Britain step by step. So certainly the UK column doesn't believe that what we're watching unfold in the country at the moment is accidental. We don't believe it's incompetence. We don't believe that Britain as a nation is failing because the quality of our people and our youngsters has failed or declined. What we're actually witnessing is Britain being attacked by the politicians in power. So we're just going to look at some of the things which are actually happening around us. This was an article from the Mirror which was focusing in on the tragic case of the family that were murdered in the Alps, and they're pointing out in this story that Surrey Children's Services have taken the young girls that have been orphaned and are actually refusing to allow the traditional birth family and relatives of the birth family to look after those children. And we wanted to flag this up because not only is it an exceptionally tragic case itself, these girls obviously massively traumatised by what's happened to their parents and those tragic events in the Alps on that day. But now these little girls are being forced to suffer more by the fact that they've been taken by Children's Services in Surrey. And what the Mirror article says is that the family had been trying to see more of the girls, and the key point is that social services were not responding and had no comment to make. So basically we are now in the situation in Britain where Children's Services can move in on any family and take their children, and they are not answerable or accountable for their actions in any way. And this surely must be an exceptionally dangerous position, and one of which, of course, we've been warning about for some time. We'll follow through on this with the Telegraph here, which has got a story talking about the number of primary school pupils who are now being arrested for so-called offences, which a few years ago most of us would have looked at with common sense and regarded them as simply being naughtiness amongst children. And some of the so-called offences they're talking about are children calling other children gay, or boys throwing sticks at conker trees. But nevertheless, police have been called and police have made arrests of these young children. And we're putting these two cases really next to each other because they both are showing us that the state is now starting to move in on families, to move in on children. Children are not the responsibility of their parents or indeed just school teachers. But the state can move in at any stage and take those children. If you're going to create a police state, of course, what you need to be able to do is to control the media. And the Independent here flagged up that the Ministry of Defence had not only lied over the background to the case of the SAS Sergeant Sgt Nightingale, who of course was imprisoned until a few days ago, having brought a firearm back from Iraq, but the Ministry of Defence was then prepared to use a D-notice in order to cover up essential elements of the story. And I think it was, in fact, a Telegraph reporter who was the person who said he was not prepared to be bullied by the Ministry of Defence, since, of course, the D-notice should only be used to effectively gag a story with implications on national security. But really the key point here in this Independent article is that we now have the British state and, of course, the Ministry of Defence under the responsibility of members of Parliament and civil servants, who are now prepared to not only lie but fraudulently use powers in order to cover the truth. So if you are moving rapidly down the road of creating a dictatorship, which is certainly the way it now appears to be going in Britain, control of the press all important. That brings us nicely onto the subject of Leveson, and we are going to stay focused on Mr. Leveson and his recent inquiry, because of course this is bringing us to the heart of the attack at the moment on free press and media. But what is proving to be fascinating is the very mixed messages which are being given out in the press at the moment. And we've taken here an Independent article, but it's saying that Labour is turning up the heat on Leveson, and that Labour is to draft its own bill enshrining a new powerful press regulator in law, which is prepared to put up for a vote in the House of Commons. So Labour Party sources have told the Independent that if the government fails to bring forward legislation to provide a statutory underpinning for a new press complaints body, Labour would do so itself. They said they'd had little confidence in promises made by the Prime Minister. So here Labour is really showing its true colours. We've got a Labour leader in Ed Miliband, of course, who was brought up in a Marxist household, and perhaps true to his colours, he's now attempting to get state control of the media in Britain. Should we really be surprised about that? I don't think so.
No.
But the lady, excuse me, the lady who is really starting to raise some questions at the moment is none other than Shami Chakrabarti, who has been extremely prominent not only within the Leveson inquiry, but of course due to her activities in Liberty, the so-called Organisation for Free Speech and Liberty. But if we just bring up another Independent article here, we will be covering some other newspapers in a second. But Chakrabarti has been speaking out and is widely reported over the weekend as backing Cameron. So here she is with apparently an anti-Labour stance. But she's also gone so far as to say that she thinks that the Leveson proposals, as have been publicised in the Leveson inquiry just published, are in fact illegal. What's your take on this, Mike? Because
I'm amazed by the whole thing. I think the whole plan has been blown out of the water. They established the Hacked Off campaign, but before that they established the Media Standards Trust, and as a result of various researchers and publications, including the UK Column and the Daily Mail and other places, the whole plan has been blown out of the water. So no sooner was Leveson about to report present his report, then he decides that he's going to get out of the country as quickly as possible. We've got Labour and the Conservatives and the Lib Dems, who all wanted to be singing off the same hymn sheet, are now arguing about what's the way forward. And we've now got Chakrabarti coming out and arguing about what's the way forward. David Bell's nowhere to be seen. Common Purpose, the name is nowhere to be seen in the newspapers anymore. Yeah. And I think they're running around like headless chickens, just really totally they just do not know what to do next.
We certainly could do with some more detailed analysis on this, but however you look at it, there is something extraordinary going on. As you say, the Daily Mail produces 11 detailed pages on exactly how the scam of the Leveson inquiry was set up. It's talking about Common Purpose, it's talking about the Media Standards Trust, it's putting the finger on Sir David Bell and Julia Middleton. And of course, Shami Chakrabarti is a huge supporter of Common Purpose, so she's totally aligned with Sir David Bell. We shouldn't forget her background, really, because, of course, Liberty was taking money from the Gaddafi regime at a time when people were accusing that of being a vicious dictatorship.
LSE, that was the LSE.
Well, that was LSE, right, sorry.
Yeah.
So Shami Chakrabarti standing up for freedom and liberty, but via her position with LSE, they were taking money from the Gaddafi regime. And, of course, Liberty, whose history goes back to supporting two paedophile organisations, Paedophile Information Exchange and Paedophile Action for Liberty. So very, very dirty organisation in its earlier days, but this is the one this lady supports. And now, having worked with Leveson, she's now attacking his paper. Is it breakdown? Well, watch this space, because obviously more is going to come out on this. But this is the sort of bizarre headline that we're seeing at the moment. So Peter Mackay in the Mail Online here, pointing out that the Hacked Off campaign, remember that the Hacked Off campaign was spawned out of the Media Standards Trust, which is the very organisation supported by Sir David Bell, who was part of Leveson. So it's a little incestuous circle. But Peter is pointing out that the Hacked Off campaign, demanding control of the press, has now collected, in fact, it's about 120,000 signatures. But he's pointing out the type of people supporting it. So we've got Harry Potter author J.K. Rowling, entertainer Stephen Fry, and actress Emma Watson. So it appears that control of the media is so important in Britain that we need the magic circle, and we need a little bit of Harry Potter magic in order to try and grab it. There's an almost cartoon element to what's happening here, but it's obviously very serious in the background.
Well, I believe it is, and they're using, if you look at the paedophile scandal and you look at this scandal, they're using celebrity and celebrities as the focus of that.
Yeah.
So, when we're talking about privacy, for example, as we've said on a number of occasions on this program, it is a dangerous thing for somebody in public service to believe that they have the right to a fully private life, because under those circumstances, we don't know, as a state, we do not know whether they're doing anything which could leave them opening to blackmail. And so a totally private life for somebody who chooses to be in public service, they should give up that right, is my view, because for the reasons I've just said. Now, on the other hand, a celebrity, yes, they choose to be in the public eye, but they're there to entertain the public, and on the other hand, there is no national security issue over whether they're, whatever they're doing in the backs of cars with people in New York, right? Well, so perhaps they do have a right to private life, and maybe that's not unreasonable. But so, in the case of this, celebrities are being pushed out front to bang on about privacy and the right to privacy and the right to a private life. But in fact, that right is being pushed in order to protect politicians and civil servants. The same with the paedophilia thing, the same with the Jimmy Savile story. It's all about celebrity, people in the media, and the focus is on the media, and keep everybody away from the politicians. The
other thing which comes through to me is that these people are allowed to do whatever they like. It doesn't matter what they do. The morality now seems to be, pushed to one side. They can do what they like, but these are the people that are going to tell us how press and media should be regulated. and it seems to me pretty sad if it now requires Harry Potter's comment. We just call up this slide here. I think this is also from the Mail, just a picture of the Hacked Off campaign and the hackinginquiry.org. But essentially, here are these people campaigning. If we dig into the back of them and we say, where is their money coming from? It's always coming from the same foundations and trusts. Esme Fairbairn, Joseph Rowntree, Nuffield. If you go through these very, very wealthy trusts, inevitably linked into the international banking community, are the people funding the campaign that we're seeing. So that there is something untoward going on here. They put up a front as if they're acting for the general public and victims, but in fact, if we look to see where the money's coming from, it's coming straight from the international banking community. I just thought we'd focus here on Hugh Grant. We're going to be told off actually because I'm going to say Independent again, but we'll stay away from the Independent tomorrow. But they had a good headline here. Hugh Grant brands the Prime Minister as disgraceful as the Hacked Off petition tops 100,000. So there's a very nice picture of Hugh Grant looking, I think, like he's had a good night last night. But here is the man who is now telling the British public how they should look after their media and press. And he's also saying that the Prime Minister is disgraceful. Now, we would agree with that comment on in certain areas, but of course this is to do with the handling of the press. So I think we just remind ourselves, here is the picture of why Hugh Grant is so upset with the press. This is the original Los Angeles police photographs when he was arrested, of course, of an indiscretion in the back of a cab with a young lady. So it's very interesting. We are now seeing people with criminal records who are being brought forward to advise us on what to do with the press. And of course, the papers over the weekend have also been pointing out that it's the policy of Max Mosley that's actually been taken up virtually lock, stock and barrel by Mr. Leveson in order to give his main recommendations. So if you're into a little bit of nookie in the back of a taxi cab with a professional lady, or you're more interested in orgies downstairs, then clearly you are the people who should be brought forward to tell us how to run the press and media. It's quite an insult, isn't it, to ordinary people. On more serious things, I think you've got a short video clip coming up.
Well, show the next. So we'll talk about this story in a second, but RT had an interview with an ex-National Security Agency veteran called William Binney, and I'm just going to play that piece of video.
FBI has access to the data collected, which is basically the emails of virtually everybody in the country, and the FBI has access to it. All the congressional members are on this surveillance too. It's not, no one's excluded. They're all included. So yes, this can happen to anyone if they become a target for whatever reason. If they are targeted by the government can go in, or the FBI or other agencies of the government can go into that database, pull all that data they've collected on them over the years and reanalyze it all. So retroactively analyze everything they've done over the last 10 years at least. AT&T facility in San Francisco documented the NSA room inside that AT&T facility where they had NARIS devices to collect data off the fiber optic lines inside the United States. So that's kind of a powerful device that would collect everything that was being sent. It could collect on the order of over 100 billion 1,000 character emails a day. One device. I believe I've been on it for quite a few years, yeah. So I keep telling them everything I think of them in my email. The change is that it's getting worse. They're doing more. That's why he is supporting the building of the Buffdale facility, which is over $2 billion they're spending on storage alone of data. So that means that they're collecting a lot more now. The central government defines what is right and wrong and whether or not they target you.
Okay, so that was William Binney, as I say, talking about, well, he's suggesting that no one is safe from government surveillance on the internet. And here we've got an article in the Telegraph saying that Theresa May claims that internet surveillance will save lives. Lives will be saved by new powers allowing security services and police to snoop on emails, web visits, social networking sites, Theresa May has said. So she's saying that people who say they are against the bill that she's introducing need to look at victims of serious crime, terrorism and child sex offences in the eye and tell them why they're not prepared to give the police the powers that they need to protect the public. And she's saying that this is not a snoopers charter, and to quote her from the Telegraph article, she says, it is absolutely not government wanting to read everybody's emails. We will not be looking at every web page everybody has looked at. So, you know, in the States,
FBI has
in the States, this gentleman is talking about the dangers of the infrastructure that government already has in the United States. We've got to assume that the UK has a similar level of infrastructure for snooping on internet traffic. But the key phrase from William Binney was, the problem is if they think they're not, they're talking about the general public here, if they think they're not doing anything that's wrong, they don't get to define that, the central government does. And, you know, as somebody said in the chat box earlier on, we have this ironic situation, or possibly hypocritical is a better position, where government is saying to us, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear, and yet they are not prepared to make their private lives public. They're quite happy to put CCTV on every street corner and snoop on us, but they're not prepared to allow us to view what they're doing.
Yeah, if you're going to run a Soviet Union, of course, that's how it is run. You create elite who have one set of rules, and you have a second set of rules for the serfs. And this is clearly the area that we're going in. Theresa May, very dangerous lady in our opinion, and of course the UK column has reported on the fact that she is the centre of a huge web now of organisations spying on the British public, of which MAPA is probably one of the most serious. I think maybe we should do a bit more detail on this and remind people of how this works. But if you want to do some research yourself, look up MAPA, M-A-P-P-A, Multi-Agency Public Protection Arrangement. And I think you'll be very, very surprised at how information can be shared around, not only from police, but from local hospitals, from local education authorities, children's services. All of these agencies can and do now spy on us to see whether any of us are deemed to be troublemakers. So we certainly can't imagine that anybody from the UK column is on any of those lists. But this is a serious subject, and if you want to do something about it, you need to learn what these people are doing, learn about what they're doing, and tell a friend, warn other people.
Well, finally, just a final comment. You know, Theresa May is saying that this is not a snoopers charter. We're not going to be looking at everything that everybody's doing. But of course, she's talking about right now. What they're doing is building the database, and that will be used in a few years' time to profile everybody.
Yeah, well, perhaps we can add to that. People do say to us on a fairly regular basis that they're concerned about their emails or telephone calls being listened to. Our view on this is that since none of us are doing anything wrong, we should be prepared for other people to listen to those calls. We may not be happy about it, but don't stop communicating. If you want to put a stop to what they're doing, communicate more, a lot more. Because at the end of the day, it's swamping the system out is the way to deal with this very, very sophisticated snooping. So do what you do best, chat, email, text, Twitter, but get the truth moving around about the background to what's happening. Theresa May needs watching. This story from The Guardian is fascinating because it reinforces really what we've been talking about. But it's also pure propaganda. So the story says that hostile states are using cyber warfare to attack UK infrastructure. And it says that Britain is being targeted by these hostile foreign states, and they're stealing information about gas, water, electricity supplies. Well, at the UK column, we find this story quite bizarre because, of course, all of our essential infrastructure supplies have been passed over to foreign companies anyway. We have French companies, we have German companies, we have Americans, all involved in what used to be part of our strategic infrastructure, and certainly energy supplies were considered to be very, very important national infrastructure. We've now handed all of that information over to foreign countries, and this article is trying to say that we're now at risk of cyber attack of that data being taken by other hostile states. Since we've given the data away in the first place, obviously it's there for anybody who wants to hoover it up. But in the background of this article, Francis Maude, we should remember common purpose supporter and the man who has ensured that the truth has not come out of the Cabinet Office about massive common purpose contracts, is cited in this story as warning of us of the danger of these hostile states. Well, our answer to this is probably where we started the programme. If you want to see who is hostile to Britain, then simply have a look at the photographs of David Cameron, Clegg and Mr. Ed Miliband, a man of Marxist background. What's the good news, Mike?
Right, well, Japan has unveiled a prototype of a new maglev train. Japan, that has had a stagnant economy for 20 years or so, is still investing in its infrastructure. And this train is now a built prototype. It's going on the test track next year. It's capable of speeds of up to 311 miles per hour. Well, in the meantime, they're still pushing ever new generations of bullet trains. So we've now got this one is going to be 190 miles an hour. But in the meantime, we've got this in Britain. We've got floods. We've got this story from a few weeks ago, Britain to be hit by 70s-style blackouts within 3 years. And the reason that we're going to be hit with 70s-style blackouts within the next 3 years is because of the European legislation, which is going to force us to shut down a large proportion of our generating capacity. We've got a crumbling infrastructure with hospitals. Another article from the Guardian today talking about hospitals full to bursting. Quite a number of the newspapers were talking about that. And in the meantime, the financial press is talking, or the economic press is talking about fiscal targets and AAA ratings, like those are important. And really what I'm suggesting here is that the Japanese have got it right, because they are promoting their infrastructure. If we were to do that, everything in the press at the moment is negative. We're in a state of collapse, and we are actually genuinely in a state of collapse.
Or being collapsed, or just...
Yes, absolutely,
we are being collapsed.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, in the past we've said this, and we've had criticism for saying this, because people look out the windows and they see that the roads are still there and the railways are still there. Yeah. But the key point about infrastructure is that unless you're planning and building 25 years ahead, if you don't maintain now, then in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, it's not there anymore. And we're seeing that increasingly. For example, as we know, 2 weeks ago we had floods in the southwest, quite serious floods. And certainly until Friday at least, the trains from Plymouth were still not running to London. And it's just an incredible situation, is it not, that in the 21st century, when we grew up with the BBC promoting Tomorrow's World, if you remember that programme, and how great the 21st century was going to be. And actually the 21st century is turning out to be worse than the 19th in terms of our capability to move around and get and develop an economy. And so, the final point here is that this is actually probably a really pessimistic time in our history, but it really could be an optimistic time in our history, because if we were simply to use the facility and the precedent that we have from the Bradbury, as Justin's articles have been trying to promote.
The point you're focusing on here is, of course, that a lot of people are saying, well, Britain can't do these things because we haven't got any money, because we haven't got any money, we're in massive debt. But this, of course, is a complete lie, which could be turned around tomorrow.
Absolutely. And you know, we've got so many people that are suffering because they're unemployed. Or we've got an entire generation of youth that have no prospects for the future. And if we used our national credit to start taking this collapsing infrastructure and build a 25-year plan for rebuilding this country, we could actually have a very optimistic future. And so anybody that in the past or now thinks that the UK column focusing on all this doom and gloom, as we do every day, this is how, you know, we're trying to suggest to people that actually this is what's wrong in this country, but we could fix it because we're identifying the problems.
It's two things. We've got to fix the people, because it's quite clear that at the moment Westminster is staffed by anti-British MPs. These are the people driving the agenda at the moment to drive this country into the ground. We are to be destroyed as a nation state and subsumed into the European Union. That's the key part of the plan. Obviously, if you're going to do this to a nation, it's best to be in control of the press, and I think this is the key reason for that. But if we can just pop that slide up again there. For those of you out there who haven't seen the programmes that we've been running on the Bradbury Pound, but the issue we're showing here is that there is past precedence for Britain, for the government issuing debt-free currency, and this is the Bradbury Pound. Read the story, it's extremely interesting. So can it be done? Of course it can be done, because it's been done before. But what is the key problem that we're dealing with? That international banking cartels are controlling Britain's finances, running a system of debt-based currency, and this is now being used to destroy the economy, because this inflation balloon means that we can't move. Could we solve the problem tomorrow? Yes, we can. Bradbury Pound is one way of doing it, but of course, little Iceland has already shown that it's quite possible for a small nation state to effectively put two fingers up to the international banking cartel.
Indeed.
So we're going to do more on that, and also our view is that George Osborne, David Cameron and the rest of the cabal in Westminster need to be brought to book over what they're doing, and their arm needs to be twisted pretty hard in order to get them to take over this new approach.
Yeah.
So as we move towards Christmas, we're going to bring in some good news, because in 2013 it's vital that everybody out there starts to do something to fight for Britain. Thanks for joining us.